Senator Whitehouse.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you again for holding this hearing. Mr. Jones, could you tell me a little bit more about the circumstances that exist right now between BP and your brother's family? You indicated that he worked for a contractor to BP, presumably?
Correct.
And if you could answer that in the context of the limit on economic damages that BP has been so noisy about saying that it would not be bound by, that it would go beyond the $75 million in economic damages and make sure that everyone affected by this was made whole. I think that's been their corporate statement. In terms of its measure against your family's experience, what do they see?
Well, every time I wake up in Baton Rouge and open up the Advocate, I see a full-page ad from BP that says that they're going to make things right and they're going to pay all legitimate claims. And we sat through a hearing a week and a half ago where they continued and repeated that saying that they're going to pay all legitimate claims. Well, I don't think that they're referring to our family's claim. I don't think. And they've made no overtures to us. I've never spoken to somebody from BP. They've made no phone call, no nothing to make any effort to reach out and at least extend their sympathies.
Wait a minute. Say that again?
Nobody from BP has contacted anybody from within our family to extend their sympathies. I'm not asking them to take responsibility, but they made it to the memorial event a couple of weeks ago. I heard that they were there, but we haven't heard from them.
You haven't? Okay. And how does the contractual relationship intervening between Gordon and BP affect this, in your view?
First things first is that I'm not a maritime attorney. I've learned a lot about maritime law in the last month and a half, of course. It's my understanding there's an agreement between the contractor, MI SWACO, and BP, whereby there potentially is some type of indemnity. But Gordon's family...
Meaning BP has agreed to indemnify...
Or MI SWACO agrees to indemnify BP, but I can't really speak on that because I've never seen any documents to that effect. That's just what I've heard. As far as Gordon's family, they have potentially a recovery against his employer, MI SWACO, under the Jones Act, and then an action.
That's limited recovery only to the formula that you described,
of course,
based on future earnings.
And then a claim under the Death on the High Seas Act against all parties responsible. However, regardless of what claims he has, there is a cap, and he cannot recover anything more than that. And so, regardless of who's at fault and what percentages of fault we ultimately determine down the road, and there may be some subrogation claims from one party to the next, but there's a cap, and they can pay that and go home.
And somebody killed in an air travel accident would not face that cap. Somebody killed in a traffic accident in Louisiana would not face that cap. Somebody killed. This is a cap that is narrowly falls on this group of victims.
And it's unfortunate that a catastrophic event is what precipitates this legislation, and that's why that specific exception to DOSA was made and introduced and passed in 2000 after a tragic event much like this one. And that's why we're here today, is to ask for that same amendment so that everybody who perishes in federal waters is protected equally under the law and is allowed to recover non-pecuniary damages, in which case there is no cap. That cap is determined by the jury.
Do you have any reaction to Mr. Coleman's suggestion that efforts to make things right for Gordon's family would amount to a substantial impairment of the contract that BP has with the United States government? We should not address it for that reason?
Like I said, I anticipate that all the companies involved and responsible for Gordon's death are more than happy. I mean, I heard that they made a grant of $500 million to LSU to fund conservation research and mitigation efforts. I'm sure they're more than willing to pay what they're obligated to pay under the law to the families. As far as everything else, I don't really have much of a comment. I have personal thoughts, but that's generally how I look at it. Is that they want to pay what they're obligated to pay under the law, and it's almost like they're restrained from doing any more, and they're hiding behind that.
Well, I appreciate that